I've just been canyoning for the first time in my life, hence the hair, but I have traveled here by myself. It's actually for work, but I thought that this would be a good opportunity to tell you guys about female solo travel in Japan and why Japan is actually great for solo travelers who are interested in food. But first I need to drive to my next location, so I'll see you there.
We were able to accomplish musically with the late night show, but also
Welcome to my room for one night. So I think when it comes to solo travel, and particularly female solo travel, the first thing that people are thinking about is safety. And although I want to talk mainly about food travels, I think this is an important part of that because it does come under the umbrella of general travel. So in Japan, I feel generally very safe. I think that a lot of other people do too. I think there's a lot of blogs out there saying how safe Japan is. I particularly feel safe when I'm on the bullet train or when I go to restaurants and, you know, just generally walking around the town during the day. But the places that I don't feel particularly safe are on crowded trains when I'm near a man. I'm always a little worried about what's going to happen. So there are actually women-only carriages on trains. At first I thought that that was kind of old-fashioned or kind of weird, but I think it does actually help. The other thing that kind of concerns me is the fact that a lot of places aren't very well lit at night. So although Tokyo is obviously, it's a big city and there's a lot of places that are very well lit, then the further you go out from the center, then the less likely that there are going to be loads of street lights. And actually, I said the further you get out of Tokyo, but I remember when I was at university within Tokyo, then probably the weirdest experience I had was walking back from the station to my dorm, which was like a 20-minute walk. And this man was kind of following me, and it was around midnight. And I remember it feeling really dark, even though there were streetlights. In the end, it was fine. I took a little detour and he stopped following me, so that's fine. But these kind of things do still happen, so you do just need to be careful. So my first tip for solo female travelers and solo travelers in general is to let someone or let multiple people know what you're doing and where you're going to be. I think the best way to do that is to tell someone that you're going on this trip and to tell them that you want to share this information with them, not only to share the experiences with them, but also to share what you're doing and your schedule, and so that they can look out for you. Because that way they'll probably be a little bit more responsive to your pictures as well, because I don't know, if you're just sending them pictures every day of your holiday, then they might get a little bit jealous, they might really not be too responsive about it. But if they know that it's to look out for you and to check that you're safe as well, then they're probably going to be a little bit happier to see that, because they'll be like, oh yay, she's had a good day, but also it's good to know that she's safe. And also they might notice more quickly if you don't send them one within the normal amount of time that you would send them, and they might be able to do something quicker if something has happened. So it's a double win for you, in my opinion. My next piece of advice, and it's pretty simple, is just to use your best judgment and your common sense and trust your gut. If you feel like something is a little bit off, then remove yourself from the situation if you can. If you see a dark alleyway that looks a little too dark, then maybe don't go down there. If you can't remove yourself from the situation, or you're walking down the street and something feels weird, then try and call someone or pretend that you're calling someone, send them a voice note, or even call your hotel. And in terms of safety when going to restaurants and eating out, then I would say I highly encourage you to just try as much as you can and to go to restaurants as much as you can. But there are going to be places that you will feel a little less secure. There might be a couple weirder characters there. So that's places like very small bars late at night, or izakaya, which is like a Japanese style pub. Those kind of things, if they're small and, you know, filled with men, then I wouldn't necessarily recommend going by yourself. I would prefer to say that you should go to a place that is a bit more popular, that you can go to a bit earlier on in the night when people are less drunk, and to look at reviews as well. A lot of hostels also have some kind of evening events or a kind of pub-like situation. So even if you're not staying in the hostel, then you could go and visit. That way you can make new friends and there'll be people who can speak English as well, so you'll feel more comfortable. Maybe you can meet someone that you can then go to an izakaya with. But generally speaking, if someone tries to talk to you at a restaurant or an izakaya, most of the time they are just curious about where you've come from, what you're doing, things like that. But just always be cautious. And finally, this doesn't really have to do with food and is a little bit controversial, because I know that people want to express their creativity and their personality in their clothing. But generally speaking, in Japan, then women don't really show their cleavage that much, or parts of the upper body. There are quite a lot of short skirts, but most of the time there aren't sort of that many cutout things or cleavagey things. Already, by being a foreigner, which I can attest to, you are going to stand out a little bit. People are going to notice you more just from being you. So if you want to avoid that gaze, then kind of going with the trends and the style that people wear here is probably a slightly better idea. But you can take that or leave it. It's up to you how you dress. I just personally don't tend to wear that kind of thing when I'm by myself. Okay, but I'm really tired, so I'm gonna go use the baths here and then sleep, and then tomorrow we can talk about some other things to do with solo female foodie travel. I went on a really cool trek and food tour, so I just want to share with you how great tours, food tours, and activities can be for a solo traveler in Japan. On this tour, then, I met two lovely people, I got some exercise, and I learned about the Satoyama and all the foods that you can forage. So I just think that there's like so much that you can do with this, and you don't have to feel lonely even though you are a lone traveler. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started though, is that everything does have its risks. I am going to be talking about the positives and all like the great social aspects of doing these kind of tours and activities, but there are inherent risks to everything, so just make sure that someone knows where you're going, make sure that you know where you're going, because a lot of these tours kind of start in one place but then go to a bunch of other places. And just be careful and make sure that you have all of your safety nets in place. Now let's go on to the fun stuff about the tours. This was a great tour for me because it was a trek out in sort of the wilderness, but I was also learning about food, so it was just perfect. And the guys were very knowledgeable and told me all about everything along the way. It was actually meant to be centered around the terraced rice paddies, but unfortunately we went at the exact wrong time, just between when they were harvested and when they were planted. So it was just like terraced hills, but it was still pretty, just not as beautiful as it could be in those specific times. So this trek was actually through something called the Satoyama, which is a general term for something that is in between the raw nature and civilization. So in between you have Satoyama. And in the past, then the Satoyama would be maintained by farmers and foresters living nearby, but these days it is slowly going out of maintenance. And so my guys showed me that one of the signs of a Satoyama area going out of maintenance is wisteria, which is this lovely purple hanging flower. And you'd think that a Satoyama going out of maintenance would be a good thing because, you know, humans aren't interfering any longer, but actually that maintenance is very important and it has repercussions to the flora and fauna and everything living in the Satoyama. So that was one topic that we touched on that I found really interesting, that made me want to research it more. But another topic that we had was the pampas grass. And so pampas grass is used in all sorts of ways in Japan. And one second. And so during the tour guide actually made me this. I hope that you could see it. I'll take another shot in a minute. But it's a pampas grass grasshopper. The tour guide made this for me just whilst we were on the tour. How cool is that? Which also leads me into just how interactive the whole tour was. So along the way, then the guides kept pointing out things and touching things and showing me things, including this really tiny, hardy kiwi. I didn't realize that kiwis grew in Japan. It is a slightly different type of kiwi. It's like really small and it was really crunchy. It was not quite ripe yet, but it tasted like a very sour green apple. It was actually quite tasty, even though it wasn't quite ripe, but yeah, that was very interesting to find out. And then we had a break at one of the peaks where they brought out a kettle and also some nuts that they had foraged from the area and then cooked in a bit of sugar. And they used this plant that we had come across during our trek to make this tea. So that was really nice. We had been walking for a long time already, so it was so refreshing to just sit down and feel kind of the cool air and sit with a cup of tea that they had foraged. It was beautiful. So then we trekked some more and we finished up, and in total it was a good like 4 hours, I think. So it was the whole morning. And then we finished up and we went back to the original meeting place. And you may have noticed that I am not in a hotel right now, I am at home. This is because it was so tiring. I could not bring myself to do this afterwards. But I am actually kind of glad because originally I wasn't going to talk about tours, but now that I have had a little bit of time to think, it means that I can actually share that with you. And I think I called this a food tour, but I don't think they would call it a food tour because you didn't actually get a meal, but I just learned about different foods or different plants that you can and can't eat along the way. So after that, then I had to look for a meal and then I had to drive to my next location. Some roadworks. Everywhere is closed because it's past 2 o'clock, so it's time for some cocoa curry. So one of the main reasons that I recommend tours to solo female travelers and just solo travelers in general to Japan is the social aspect. So just because you are a lone traveler doesn't mean you need to be lonely. So you're always going to have at least one other person with you, right? Because you'll be with a guide. So you'll have someone to bounce off of. And then if you go on a group tour, then you'll have a lot of other people who are also having the same first time experiences with you. I used to not really like the idea of group tours, but I think they're actually really good for solo travelers because all of these people are seeing these things for the first time with you as well. So you are all experiencing that together and it can be a lot of fun. And then if you like those people and you get on, then maybe you could even go and do more things together. And if you don't like them, it's fine because you're never going to see them again. So it's a very low commitment social interaction. The next is that you know the price up front, which I think can be really helpful for planning and budgeting. Because for example, if you're by yourself and you're thinking, okay, I've got to have breakfast, then I've got to go to this place, then I've got to go to this place by this time, then I'm going to have lunch at that place, and then I've got to go to these other 2 places, and then I've got to have dinner at that place, and I've got to make sure that I have drinks at this other place that I'm going to. Oh my God, it can be so overwhelming. Whereas if you have a tour and you know that it includes a meal, you know that it includes a bunch of the places that you wanted to go to, then it takes out so much stress. Because you can just go to those places, you can just follow a tour guide, you don't need to think about looking at the maps and looking at your phone, having your head down the entire time, looking for where you need to go. You can just experience everything knowing that your guide is going to guide you. And do remember that these tours involve a lot of stuff. So for example, I did a Tsukiji tour recently and I thought that that was quite expensive because it was about $100. And I was thinking, oh my God, like why would I need $100? Because everything at Tsukiji is relatively cheap. But the thing is that it includes so much and it also obviously includes the guide's knowledge, which is the next point that I want to talk about, is that the guides have knowledge that you don't have. And they also have access to places that you don't have. So on that Tsukiji tour, for example, we got to see behind the scenes how the tamagoyaki were being made. So that is something that I would not have been able to do by myself. And the same thing for my Satoyama tour. I wouldn't have been able to go to any of the places that we went on the trek because you're only allowed to go there with those verified, certified guides. So you know how much you're going to spend, you get all this extra knowledge and access to all these places you wouldn't get normally, and you get a social element. So that is what you are paying for. Even though it can seem kind of expensive, you're getting all of these things, plus, you know, the actual physical food that you might get and all of the photos that you can take along the way. So those are things that would be really difficult to get all by yourself. So if you're coming to Japan, and whether you're a solo female traveler or not, so if you're coming to Japan and whether you're a solo female traveler or not, it doesn't really matter. I highly recommend booking at least one tour for your time here. And I'll put a couple of resources and links in the description below, just of the ones that I do know. And if you found that useful or interesting, then you can also sign up to my monthly newsletter, which is just things that I've written about Japan that month. But that is it for my day 2 of my 4-day trip around Hokuriku. So I'll see you in Toyama tomorrow to talk about what to eat. Okay, so I am really tired. I have walked so much today. I went to a place called the Toyama Alpen Route, which is really cool because basically you can just go across all these mountains by these different types of transport. So there's like a trolley car and a cable car and a bus and all of this stuff, and there are different places to stop on the way. And it's also kind of semi-hiking, or it can be fully hiking if you want to. And my feet are killing me. I slept with my mouth wide open on the bus on the way back. But I ate some very thin udon noodles. Usually udon noodles are very, very thick, but this specific type of regional Toyama udon is a very thin type, so it even came with rice on the side, so you have noodles and rice as well. And that's what I want to talk about today: what to eat as a solo female traveler in Japan. What should you look for and what should you try whilst you're here by yourself with no strings, no one that you have to please. You can just eat whatever you want. So the first thing that I want to say is that there are so many regional things. Sorry, I've switched my camera because of storage. But wherever you go in Japan, if you're outside of Tokyo, well, even Tokyo has its own specific dishes as well. But wherever you go, there are these famous dishes and famous twists on normal dishes that each place has. It can go as wide as the region, or it can go as small as little towns as well. In Toyama, then, when I was on top of the mountain, then there were these thin udon noodles with mountain vegetables. But there's also black ramen in Toyama, which is a kind of really salty ramen with a lot of garlic. And they also have a lot of things that are themed with the color of black because of the name kurobe, which has the word black in it. So wherever you go, you need to look for that famous dish or the famous ingredient or whatever that place, that region is known for. Then the next thing I have is a bit of a kind of checklist of places that you should go. Obviously, I don't know where you're going in Japan. I don't know if you're going to be in Tokyo. I don't know if you're going to be going around places near to Tokyo. But generally speaking, there are a few things that I want you to look out for, specifically 4 things. And the first one is convenience stores and supermarkets. So this sounds a little bit cliche. I know a lot of travel places say to go to a convenience store, but it does just give you an insight into what people grab on the go around here and what people might actually eat when they're just looking for something quick. Then the second thing is teishoku. So teishoku is a set meal, and basically you just get a bunch of stuff all at once on your table. You get like rice and fish and like something pickled. You get a bunch of different things. It doesn't have to be fish. I said fish, but it could be chicken, it could be anything. And it gives you a good insight into something that might be local, or it might just be a sort of normal Japanese way of eating. And they're usually really tasty and also not too expensive. The third one is looking for a queue outside a restaurant. So this usually means that it is popular, and you know, maybe people have just seen the line and they thought that it was a good place, so they've also lined up. who knows? It could also be a local favorite that loads of people go to and they always go to at that time. You don't necessarily need to go when you see the line, but if you do see a line, then note it down and try to go later. And this usually means that they don't take reservations, but you can just line up, and usually I've never waited more than an hour. The usual amount I might wait for food in a line is about 15 minutes or so. And then the fourth one you don't have to do, but I think is a really nice way to try out some different food that you might not find elsewhere, and that is at an izakaya. And an izakaya is actually kind of like a Japanese pub, but it is basically the idea that you have food to go with drink. So obviously as a solo female traveler, that might be a little bit daunting. It might not be the best idea because there are a lot of drunken people there who might try to talk to you. So if you're not comfortable with that, then that is totally okay and you don't need to go to one. It might be best to go with someone that you know or really near to your hotel so that you know you can just get out of there as soon as you need to. And there are ones that you can go to that are like a standing bar, and then you can just talk directly to the owner. So you're separated, like you have someone to talk to, but you're separated from them, so you can talk to them that way. Though they might not speak much English, you could give it a go. I just think that izakaya are a really fun way to try out some Japanese style drinks and also to try out some food that you just don't really get elsewhere. I don't know, there's just a lot of locality to izakaya usually. Okay, so we've got regionality, we've got the checklist. The next thing is not getting tired of being adventurous. So I think that most people, when they go abroad, they're going to get a little bit tired. They're going to want something that's a little bit more familiar to them. Unless you're really comfortable and you know that you can just eat whatever for every single meal, I would say that you shouldn't aim to eat something new every single day, or at least for one of the meals. Then there should be a little bit of a break somewhere. Personally, when I go to different countries with my family, then we usually end up having like at least one meal that's at the Hard Rock Cafe or something like that, where it's just something very familiar and we don't have to sort of be tired from all the adventures we've done and also from thinking about food. So if what you're used to is Western food, then there is actually something called yoshoku in Japan, which basically means Western food, but it's not Western food. It's a Japanese take on Western food. But otherwise, especially in the big cities like Tokyo and Osaka, then there are some good Italian restaurants and burger places, pizza places. Those kind of things are quite readily available. You'll just need to look for some reviews, especially if you find a lot of good English reviews on a Google Maps place that's originally in English, then that probably means that a lot of Westerners have gone there and they have found it to their liking. So, you know, that's probably a safe bet. And lastly, is there any one dish that I think you should definitely try whilst you're here? Not really, other than if there's something that you have an idea of that you've tried in your country that is supposed to be Japanese and you like, actually you don't even have to like it, just something that you've tried in your home country and you're kind of interested in what it's like in Japan, you should try it. You know, for example, sushi. There's California rolls and a lot of salmon and all of that kind of stuff in the UK, but in Japan, sushi can be quite a different experience. I mean, a lot of the time it's actually sashimi and you have it with other things. Or ramen. A lot of Japanese people that I know have said that they didn't like the ramen that was in London. So maybe you can try that here, especially because there's so many different types of ramen as well. You just have a huge choice here. So there's not really like one dish that I would say you really, really need to try. But if you already have some preconceptions of something, try it here. See what it's actually like. And after all that talk about food, I have once again got hungry, so it's time for my dinner. I guess I'll give you a shot of what I'm eating. I'm hopefully eating some sashimi or some sushi because I am near the sea in Toyama. They are known for their sushi and their fresh fish. And then I'm gonna go to bed and I'll see you tomorrow. Say bye bye mountains. So today it was raining, so I think that is a great opportunity to tell you about the importance of backup plans and also budgeting, because they're kind of related, right? So I would always advise for a trip to Japan to plan for at least 1 day of rain. Now, depending on the season that you come in, there might be absolutely no rain, or it might be rain the entire time that you're here, because there is rainy season and typhoon season. So first of all, do just make sure that you know what season you're coming into Japan and what to expect from that, but then also just have backups for a couple of days as well. And for those rainy days, you are going to also need more money, because a lot of the time, if you're doing sort of outdoorsy things like going to temples and shrines, that's not going to cost you anything. But if you then need to go indoors because it's raining, then you probably would want to go to things like museums or an indoor activity which is going to cost money. And for me, when I go traveling, I like to do a mixture of planning and exploring based on my energy when I'm there. Because if you plan too much, you're going to be stressed about all the things that you need to see and then be upset if you don't see them all. And then if you don't plan enough, you're going to be disorganized and you're not going to see all the things that you want to see. So I personally think that it's a good idea to have a list of places that you want to see and food that you want to eat. And then you can kind of work your plan around that. And then, as I have always been saying for all of these solo female travel videos, is that you should always tell someone what you're going to do each day. So that will also help you kind of be a bit more organized with yourself, because you could basically just do like a little report that you send to your friend or family member and just say, today I'm going to do all of these things. It's a nice sharing experience as well. So for example, in this situation, I had 2 outdoor things that I had to do. This was a little bit different because it was for coverage for work as opposed to just my own trip where I can change things on the fly. But I ended up doing this railroad bicycle thing, mostly in the rain, in this giant poncho. And then I went to a completely different region and it was just completely sunny for the rest of the day. And I rented a bicycle and I went around this area called Azumino. I'm cycling through Japan. This is wasabi ice cream. Oh my god, look at all that wasabi. But if it had been raining all day and I didn't know what to do instead, then that day would have probably been somewhat wasted, because everything that I had planned to do was completely outdoors. And I'm about to talk about budgeting as well, but obviously planning is a huge topic and so is budgeting. So if you would like me to do a full video on each of those topics, then please let me know in the comments below and I will make it. So then, talking about budget, I think that it can be quite difficult to pin down, because I think especially for solo female travelers, everyone's situation is really quite different. But I have written down a kind of minimum basic plan here, which is based on Tokyo. So let's just go through it. So I've said 8,000 yen a night for hotels, 2,000 yen per meal, which is 6,000 yen per day. And 2,000 yen per meal is actually all that I asked for my coverage trips. 2,000 yen a day for an activity of some sort, 2,000 yen a day for snacks, 2,000 yen a day for souvenirs, and 2,000 yen a day for trains and transport. This doesn't include sort of tours or activities that you might book in advance or any travel outside of Tokyo. So that all sums up to about 22,000 yen a day, which is, as of right now, around 150 US dollars. So as I said, this is obviously a minimum. You can go lower than these if you know what you're doing. I mean, for example, you could go to a hostel, which was like 3,000 yen, or one of those capsule hotels, which are much cheaper than 1,000 yen per night. And maybe you won't have any snacks, and maybe you'll be really frugal with your meals. You know, there are ways to do it, but the thing is that you're probably on holiday, so you're probably in the mindset of spending more rather than spending less. And an 8,000 yen a night hotel in the middle of Tokyo is not going to be that great. This is just a kind of really base level to work off of. But you can use it as a framework to then figure out kind of what you want to prioritize and how much money you want to budget for your trip. And again, I could do a whole video of this. If you found any of this useful, I'm actually a travel writer based in Japan, so I'm starting a new monthly newsletter, which is basically going to be a roundup of the things that I've written and things that are happening in Japan that month. You can sign up in the description below. But that's it for my 4-day trip around Hokuriku. I hope you've learned something about solo travel around Japan, and I'll see you next time. Bye.